Greetings and good morning. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here for this Catalyst New Moon forecast, where we go over the main astrological themes for the current new moon, which is in Taurus. We're just on the heels of it at this recording and leading up to our full moon on the 1st of May, which will be a full moon in Sagittarius. So the title of this transmission, of this forecast, is The Spiritual Warrior Emerges. And the subtitle is The Starseed Lineup, because wow, there is a lot of galactic representation in this new moon astrology, especially right now. You know, if you've had the Starseed reading, if you resonate with that, you know what your origins are based on the reading that you got. And most people that I read for have a number of connections. It's not usually just one. It's a number of connections, but most of you are going to be represented right now, right? We have Andromeda, we have the Pleiades, we have Orion involved. So we're going to break all of that down astrologically so that you understand. But, you know, this is just really a quick check-in here to unpack some of the main themes of this new moon leading us up to the full moon. So welcome back, everyone. Special shout out to Catalyst membership. You guys are my ride or dies, and I appreciate you so much because of that. And of course, if you are a subscriber here, thank you. And welcome back to this new moon forecast. And if you're new here, thank you. Taking the time to stop by, listen to what Catalyst Energies has to offer in terms of astrology and intuitive insight. So everybody that's involved, of course, if you find any value in this channel whatsoever and you want to help it reach a wider audience, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, hit the notification bell if you want to get a notification when I upload things, and certainly comment, share, all the things, right? You can find Catalyst Energies on Facebook and Telegram. There are more socials to come, a little bit of teaser for that kind of stuff. And of course, you can join the Catalyst Energies mailing list, where I send out the updates for these forecasts. And whenever I am dropping any kind of special report or reading sale, it goes to the membership and my email list first. It's free. It's right on the homepage of the website, also linked in the description box below. So there's new things coming all the time. I'm working very deeply and I'm very focused right now on rebranding and getting more stuff. There's more stuff coming. But Facebook and Telegram currently are the places where you can follow me on social media. So now that we got all of that out of the way, always have to do that, right? I mean, this is a business after all. So any of you who run your own businesses, you know that you have to basically learn how to be a publicist, how to be your own marketer, you basically have to wear a bunch of different hats, at least until you can start bringing in other teammates into the fold to help you fill in the gaps of the areas that you don't have a lot of experience. So special shout out to Deep Thought Design, who is working with me very closely in terms of rebranding and helping Catalyst Energies actually reach a wider audience. And I'm going to link Nicole's stuff in I'm going to pin a comment in this video, wherever you're watching it, or social media, so that you can access her work as well, because she is very good with her design work and very professional. She is a colleague of mine in terms of our Reiki training as well. And so she works with a lot of people in our type of field, the healing arts and intuitive arts, getting them, lined up business-wise. So I really appreciate you, Nicole. Thank you. Special shout out to you and Deep Thought Designs. Anyway, what I have up on the screen here is, some of you may know, I would hope so if you're a regular, but if you don't, it's okay. Because this is really going to prime us for what we're going to talk about in this forecast. So we're going to be looking here at this new moon in Taurus because it is conjunct the Pleiades star cluster. And that is what we're looking at here on the screen. On the right, the Pleiades star cluster. On the left is the star Aldebaran, which is going to be coming up much more directly in the weeks ahead, because that is in alignment with the zodiac degree of 10 degrees Gemini, but that's coming later. But that is the left eye of the bull in the Taurus constellation. So then that's where the Pleiades star cluster is. And I'm bringing that up because not only is the new moon in alignment, actually sitting pretty much right on top of the Pleiades, it's also Mercury, it's also Uranus that is still in this general area, even though it's moved past the sign of Taurus. It is still very much in the constellation of Taurus, still very much in the Pleiades star cluster. And asteroid Ceres is also in the mix of the Pleiades star cluster. So we have a stellium not only in Taurus right now with this new moon, but also in the Pleiades star cluster. So I bring this image up, to familiarize all of ourselves, to prime the conversation, and just have something nice to look at, right? This is natural photography of the night sky. So the title of this transmission, this forecast, that's really been coming through for me, and probably for many of you, is The Spiritual Warrior Emerges. And the subtitle is the Starseed lineup, right? This is the main theme about everything that we have been going through, even since the beginning of this Fire Horse year. We're about halfway through the eclipse cycle. We're a quarter of the way through the Fire Horse year. And it's now during this time that all of those difficulties, those challenges, we've basically been forged in the fire of our own challenges. If you remember, the last new moon was in conjunction with not only Chiron, but the Andromeda Galaxy, which is the end of Aries. Well, today, along with this new moon, all this energy around the Pleiades and the Pleiadian star cluster, Mars is conjunct Chiron at this same basic degree, right? A little bit past it. So we'll talk about the more specifics and precise aspects of this conjunction with Mars and Chiron, but this is one of those karmic, intense moments of healing. So what came through a lot, especially in the last week, as I was really just mentally and spiritually, energetically preparing for this, really feeling into the energy, because it's been very difficult. And I'm going to share a couple of personal things generally about this time period that will probably be relatable to a lot of you, because it has been really hard. And what I've noticed over the years around these Pleiadian windows, because there's been a lot of exits, and leading up to it, there will be some coming off of this new moon. And that is because I've noticed quite a bit that when there are large Pleiadian connections, that is a window where souls exit and transition. And a lot of that's happening right now. It's not the only difficulty, but it's certainly one of them right now. So, and it doesn't have to be a physical exit. That's the other thing. There's a lot of people that are going through their own death process in different ways right now because of their challenges. So we've been forged in the fire of those challenges for months, if not longer. And this whole lunar cycle is going to determine what type of warrior really emerges from our experiences. It can be the spiritual warrior that has taken responsibility for their own healing, for our own healing, coming forward as a healed and healing, let me just, as a caveat here, we all know that healing is never a fixed position. It's never done at a spiritual level. We're always growing and evolving. There's always something that can be worked on and healed. But in terms of Chiron, and certainly lots of things that have happened, we have been forged in the fire of these types of situations. And as Mars and Chiron are coming into their conjunction, almost like pretty much exactly at the same time that this new moon is exact, I mean, down to the minute, it's very precise. Is it going to be the spiritual warrior that emerges, that is going to face the challenges with authority, with a sense of command of our self and our environment, in attunement to the cosmic order of things? Or is the inner tyrant going to come out onto the surface? Someone who has not necessarily acknowledged how their past wounds and victimization is still influencing their behaviors, their decisions, their mindset, right? So the spiritual warrior or the inner tyrant, we're going to know for sure when we get to the full moon, and certainly when we get to the beginning of June, where Uranus will be in a T-square with the nodes. So we'll talk more about that at the full moon time. If you're a part of Catalyst membership or you've had a private reading with me recently, we've been talking about that time period for a while. So that's one of the benefits, I would say, of membership. Besides the fact that you get 2 readings a month, premium membership, you get your own personal reading every month, you get a dedicated discount code. I am working on other exclusive benefits. I am really toying with the idea of bringing back the Starseed ministry, the live stream, but it's only going to be for members. So that's a little teaser as well. I haven't decided yet, but I'm really thinking about it, because with all this UAP, UFO stuff that's coming out, I really want to have a space for the Starseed community that's actually grounded in the spiritual development, as opposed to kind of getting like lost in the weeds around that narrative, because there's so much there. But I want to keep that for membership. So that's another thing. So if you have feedback about that, guys, let me know. Curious to see if that's something you would really enjoy. So, spiritual warrior emerges. So this is just a drawing, right? A rendering of the Taurus constellation, all of the stars involved. You can see, again, here's the Pleiades star cluster. Down here is the left eye of the bull, Aldebaran. So we are talking about the Taurus constellations. You know, there's plenty of information out there about the general kind of mundane read about Taurus, right? You know, being very patient. We're talking about fixed earth, you know, very settled, slow to move, right? And sometimes it can be lazy. You know, Taurus people can be very lazy because they're very slow to move. But of course, like the bull, once you anger that bull, you're not going to stop it. Right. So, and that's another piece of this spiritual warrior emerging, because once this energy really comes forward through the course of the next 2 weeks and really culminating at the full moon in Sagittarius, which is conjunct Antares, Antares being one of the royal fixed stars and is associated with Archangel Uriel, the fire of God. Talk about purifying fire. Once we get to that full moon, you know, this energy of the spiritual warrior, you know, the fire that we've been forged in, is going to be something that we can bring forward and utilize in our own way for purification of ourselves, purification of situations that we are ready to leave behind. And this is the big piece, I would say, of the Chiron-Mars conjunction. So I just wanted to give you some visual insight for those of you who really find a lot of value in being able to look at images, have the chart in front of you. This is how you learn, right? Not everybody learns just by listening or reading. Some people really need visual aids, and that's why I'm bringing this up, just to give you, you know, that context. So what I've noticed over the years of doing this work is that as I said earlier, there have been a lot of exits. There tend to be a lot of exits and transitions when there are big Pleiadian astrological aspects. And that is certainly happening right now. So like I said, some of it is sudden, some of it is not sudden, but it's happening very naturally. And there are souls who are ready to go. I've also noticed that if you really start to dig into the charts of these folks that are transitioning at this time, you'll probably find Pleiadian starseed connections. So there's a portal that's opening, right? There is a veil that is thinning when these big Pleiadian transits are happening. And this is a time period when souls are making their transition. So you may find that that is what's been happening as well. But all of this, like I said, has been priming us for this time. We've been forged in this fire. So with this new moon. And even beyond that, not only being forged in this fire, this really karmic moment of healing that Mars and Chiron are representing right now, even beyond that, we take this energy and move through the next 2 weeks in a way that, you know, our will coaxing our soul, you know, from the depths of our soul coming forward and really enjoying that role, whatever it is, right? And maybe we just need some perspective. Maybe we need some clarification. And I would say there has to be a lot of stuff that's burned off. And I feel like that's what's happening right now with this Chiron-Mars conjunction at these last degrees of Aries. So, you know, we're just going to go over the main themes. One of my goals right now, and a lot of the feedback that I've gotten, especially as I'm trying to reach a wider audience right now, is to consolidate my information and keep the long-form content for those who are much more interested in that, right? Which is going to be membership, people who are getting private readings, just the major stuff as we go through. But this day, this new moon, the things that are happening right now are really worth looking at. And as we go through the next 2 weeks, I would say this weekend is very intense. Next weekend, which is Memorial Day weekend here in the US, also has some intense transits. And kind of in the middle is like this processing period that, and there's certainly things going on that are worth paying attention to and are much more relevant for kind of like a daily astro weather type of thing, which is something I'm also working on. But for the time being, let's start diving into the astrology here. All right, folks, let's see if we can, give you the Cliff Notes version of this astrology right now. So let me bring my notes up. So as you can see from this chart, this is today. I actually cast this about an hour ago. So the moon is coming into its most balsamic phase, right? And so what does that mean? That means that it's at its darkest. You can't see the new moon because the light of the sun is shining on the other side of it. The moon is between us and the sun at this point. And everything from the last new moon is really being distilled down to the essence of what it is. And if you remember the last new moon in the conjunct Chiron, it was really about facing the music. And in some cases, it was facing the music about our own wounds and healing, and really just accepting where we've been, how it has shaped us, and how we're going to move forward. And this new moon and this period moving forward from now is about how we're going to utilize what emerges, which ideally is this spiritual warrior energy. We've been primed, like I said, we've been forged in this fire over these weeks and months. So not much going on in the astrology right this moment, right? And balsamic moon phases and new moon phases are really good for just settling into that stillness, right? You're not necessarily trying to make big decisions. You're not necessarily trying to take bold action right now. However, what I will say is this Mars-Chiron conjunction at 29 degrees of Aries will feel like that there is a need to channel this energy somewhere. So let's talk about this, because this transit, even more than the new moon itself, with all of this Uranus, Mercury, you can see they're all lined up here at the Pleiades. It's this transit with Mars and Chiron that I think is going to be the most potent in terms of where we put our intentions with this new moon. So 29 degrees Aries, the music of the spheres. This is the Sabian symbol, okay? And it's about being attuned to cosmic order, attunement. This word has come up quite a bit for me personally, and it keeps coming up in my awareness in things that I listen to, just things that come up. Attunement, right? This is how you become a Reiki practitioner, for instance. You become attuned to the energy, right? And so you're tuning in, you're vibrating, you're resonating with cosmic order, the music of the spheres, right? So you're listening to the inner voice. So what is that inner voice saying? Right? This is really the crux of it. Because if that inner voice is your intuition, it is a sense of sacred duty, it is that spiritualized warrior archetype that's coming forward and having full cognizance of like, wow, those situations were the fire that forged this part of me that's coming forward, right? The shadow of this, because everything has a shadow, even these astrological archetypes, it's a spectrum. The shadow is like you're listening to your own ego. It's not really your inner voice, right? And this is the trap of things like channeling. And I'm not saying all channelers are like this. This is why you have to be very, very mindful about who you listen to, and if you are in fact channeling yourself, because a lot of times it's really just a different portion of the ego coming through. So in this case, this music of the spheres, this shadow side, is self-deception. We are listening to a voice that we think is our intuition or is spirit guiding us, that we're attuned to cosmic order, but really we're attuned to the energy of our wounds and our victimhood that is still hanging around because we haven't let that go. And a lot of times it's because we don't know who we are and we're afraid to let things go because we don't know anything other than being that victim, right? And people hold on to that identity. People get energy and strength in a lot of ways from that identity, right? They become the villain, right? That's kind of how that happens. So there is a significant risk here of the self-deception. So right off the bat, we need to be aware of that. But this conjunction does signify a very karmic turning point, very intense. Wounded or aggressive energy can be refined. And the precision here is really important. It's conscious. It's sovereign action, right? Yes, it's intense. Yes, we're feeling wounded. Yes, we're feeling a crushing disappointment in some cases. But when you start to attune to the divine plan here, as opposed to your own personal ego-oriented plan, which is not a negative thing. We all have an ego that needs to be healthy and do its job. But if that is the only thing directing, then this is where the self-deception comes in. With the music of the spheres, it has this added element of being in cosmic harmony, encouraging healing, right? Through self-assertion, spiritual awareness, right? Being honest with ourselves. And most importantly, if we're going to talk about Chiron, moving past our victimhood, right? So we're redefining power, because we want to have power over, as opposed to personal authority. But this is what we need, personal authority to mend, to heal, and to lead, right? We're reorienting ourselves with this type of transit, this conjunction of Mars and Chiron, to end or transform anything that has been holding us back. And a lot of times that victimhood identity is what holds us back. And it's hard. We don't want to let that go of just like, man, I've done, the universe done me dirty, or this person or whatever, right? Like this thing happened to me, in my childhood, and it continues to shape every decision, every action, everything that I do, but I can't let it go because I have this burning, again, you're just burning in the fire of your own trauma. And we really do need to come out of it. But this can initiate sudden and rapid change. And then you connect to that spiritual warrior energy, and our actions are guided by intuition, the attunement to cosmic order, and a sense of sacred duty, right? Sometimes I would say most of the time, we're not going to have the perspective of why things happen the way they did until the end, right? But we have this really unique moment here for those of us who are on a path of spiritual development and are applying that to our everyday lives, that we can really come out of that victimhood status and turn that energy into something very productive and very healing, okay? So along with that transit today, we have a new moon along with Mercury and Uranus and asteroid Ceres, which is the goddess of the grain, goddess of agriculture, what provides, what's nurturing, all of that in connection to the Pleiades, right? All of that in the connection of the Pleiades, and moving forward with intention and sovereignty and a sense of real authority and command over who we are, and really taking that energy and using it in a way that coaxes the depth of our soul up to the surface, and enjoying that role, right? We may not have necessarily planned on fulfilling that role, right? We may have wanted to stay in our woe is me victimhood status for ever, but we move forward. So a really good example, actually, I want to share is that, so my mom just finished her degree, and she received an award from the college, the Board of Directors Award. So number one, I'm very proud of her for finishing her degree in this very difficult time, because she was caretaking for my father, who was dying, and also finishing school. And in fact, she used that experience. This is like a perfect example. She used that experience of going through being a primary caregiver for a hospice patient, going through the process. She used that experience for her capstone research project, which I thought was amazing, and just talking about the mental health impact of caregivers for hospice patients, right? And so she took that experience and was forged in the fire of it in order to come out successful, and was acknowledged for it. So not only am I very proud of her for doing that, and she's finished her degree, but it's a perfect example of like moving through these situations and coming through them, utilizing them as the catalyzing force to transcend, right? And to learn something and to grow. So perfect example of this energy. And so it's really up to us to move forward, right? We have been primed. And sometimes it's difficult when you're in the fire to be like, oh, this fire is forging this warrior archetype that's going to come forward. But now we're here and it's coming forward. So over the next 2 weeks, especially over the next week, things are going to start to surface that are going to be like, that's interesting. You're going to start to see the challenges coming forward. So the big ones right away, I would say, is the fact that there's going to be a lot of shifting of energy, because Mercury is going to come into Gemini, Venus is going to come into Cancer, and Mars is going to come into Taurus right after this, right this weekend. So the energy is going to shift pretty dramatically from this point. Mars is going to go into Taurus and really pump the brakes. Some people are going to feel like, wow, this is really a stick in the mud for me, but it also is going to take that personalized action that is often very spontaneous and sometimes rash and hasty, and really just almost force it into patience and a sense of groundedness, right? So if you are a Mars heavy person, or if you're ruled by Mars, you have a lot of Aries in your chart, for instance, or even Scorpio, because Mars rules Scorpio as well, you may find this a little bit frustrating. But honestly, I think it's between that and Venus moving into Cancer, which is going to really take the energy of value and meaning and security into the home and family, into our own emotional rootedness. That's what Cancer really represents. And so this energy is going to change, and we're going to become much more stable in our action. We're going to become much more emotionally rooted and grounded in what allows us to feel safe and secure and emotionally powerful, with Mars and Venus now shifting gears. But then Mercury is going to come into Gemini. It's going to meet Uranus on, it looks like tomorrow, actually. It's going to come into Gemini and it's going to meet Uranus. Now, it's going to haul ass through Gemini, which is the home territory of Mercury. So with Venus in Gemini, I feel like that the nervous system has been really active, right, in Gemini. It's not just our thoughts necessarily, but it's everything related to the nervous system in general. So people have been having a hard time sleeping. I know for me that it's just like the mental energy has been just very consistent, just thoughts kind of like consistently running, right? Maybe there is a lot more communication amongst those in relationships, that kind of thing, right? There's been information shared, valuable information shared. Maybe difficult conversations that have been happening with Venus and Gemini. And that's still the case right now. When Mercury comes into Gemini, it is going to be just a blast of information, especially a blast of information when it meets Uranus, right? These are sudden flashes of insight. These are unexpected, magical breakthroughs with Mercury and Uranus coming into conjunction. And the degree of 2 degrees Gemini, which is Santa like filling the stockings, hanging in front of the fireplace, it also represents maybe unexpected gifts or miracles that kind of come out of nowhere and are addressing something deep. But you have to actually create the vessel in order to receive that. There's this type of innocence with this degree of Gemini that encourages us to really believe in the universality of abundance, right? So this is going to come right after this new moon as Mercury comes into Gemini, into its home, and meets Uranus. So there's a sudden, like I said, sudden, unexpected, magical breakthroughs that are also going to happen at this same time, which I think is really, really great that this is happening. But there'll be a lot of information, right? A lot of information that's received, a lot of information that we're going to be processing as Mercury moves through Gemini, and it's really going to kick off with this conjunction with Uranus tomorrow, which is the 17th. And on the 18th, as we're going to see, and I'm going to move the chart ahead here, on the 18th is when the energy shifts with Mars and Venus. What we're going to see here is that then Mars and Venus, by the end of the weekend, are going to come into different signs. Now, something else I want to bring up right now, and I'm going to share the screen again, is that Black Moon Lilith right now, the true Lilith, is sitting at the degree that the full moon is going to be in. So there is a space, a primal, unconscious, powerful space within us that fire wants to inhabit, right? The fire of God, the divine flame, Antares, right? The rival to Mars, that's what it really represents. Now, this is something that we're not really consciously aware of, but it's going to present. We're going to feel it. We're going to feel that fire, I would say, within us to begin with, right? So just be aware that when the full moon comes, it's going to illuminate that which is something we can't really consciously perceive, but we know is kind of like under the surface, right? It is deep within us. It's to the point where it's very primal. That's what Black Moon Lilith represents, is something primal, something that sometimes we push away because we kind of have this shame around it, but it's so powerful. So whatever that is, it may not present itself very consciously, but I assure you that fire will be burning by the time we get to that full moon, and we'll have full awareness of what that fire is that we have access to, right? Because we've been forged in that fire, and now that's a tool for us to use. And by the time we get to the full moon, it will be fully illuminated. And you're going to see at that point who the spiritual warriors that are emerging are within each of us, and who is allowing their inner tyrant to take control. And Also, who is getting burned because they're completely spiritually bypassing. And that's something that's going to come up in this astrology as well. So let's move forward, shall we? And like I said, Mars is about to come into Taurus. Venus is about to come into Cancer on the 18th, and the energy really shifts. We get much more grounded. We become much more emotionally rooted and in our bodies. And in our relationships, our focus is going to be much more on, home and family and our emotional stability when it comes to Venus. And Mars is going to be very situated in what is. Because that's the thing about Taurus, fixed earth, what is, right? And what is that which we have possession of. It is our resources, it is our body, it is our state of our health, it is our energy field. And we have that to act upon or to project ourselves into, right? And so there might be a lot more focus on the medium of our growth, so to speak, which is, again, our resources, the state of our health, that which is ours, right? So we're going to get a lot more grounded, I would say. But mentally, the information is going to start pouring in with Mercury in Gemini at this point, okay? So when we move forward, I would say to the following weekend, which is really where I want to focus, it's going to, again, there's going to be more stuff coming. And that also is the first quarter moon is on the 23rd. So let's move ahead a week here and look at that, because what you're going to see is just visually, you'll see that the aspect lines are going to start getting more pronounced. There's a lot of exact astrological aspects happening at this point. So what day of the week is this? The 25th. So this is actually Monday, which is Memorial Day. So we'll go back a couple days and just look at some things, because this is where it's going to ramp up again, as we're going to see here. Venus in Cancer is going to square Neptune. So this is going to be one of those reality checks. Venus in a square to Neptune. Neptune in Aries. Regardless of where Neptune is, there's always the possibility of some sort of spiritual bypassing. And in this case, I would say that has definitely been happening. There is this kind of hands, fingers in the ears. I'm just kind of pushing everything out. I'm really just focusing on what's happening within my personal orbit. And you're not completely shutting everything out, but with Neptune involved, we always have to be aware that there's some illusion involved, there's smoke and mirrors involved, and of course it is direct. And so the fog of war is very present when Neptune is moving direct. Venus in Cancer squaring Neptune is going to be one of those reality checks about okay, well, as much as we want to kind of just push everything out and just focus on what's right here within us, and there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. This square from Venus come next weekend is going to be the first of a reality check about okay, well, we're making decisions and kind of planting our flag in this new position, and we actually have to commit to something. And maybe we need to kind of talk ourselves into it at that point, but it's really gonna blow away a lot of the illusion. And so a Venus Neptune square is going to really challenge us of, is it too good to be true? Then it probably isn't. You know what I mean? It might blast a lot of illusions out of the water in terms of where we feel the most secure, where our value and meaning lies in terms of home, family, our emotional cohesion. And keep in mind, Cancer and the fourth house also extends out to your family identity, your tribal connections, your clan, and your nation, right? Patriotism and national connection is part of Cancer in the fourth house. And remember, the U.S. natal chart is very Cancer heavy. And this weekend, the 22nd, 23rd, 24th into the 25th is Memorial Day weekend, which is honoring veterans, veterans that have been lost in war across all the armed services. So it's going to really bring up a lot about this, I think. And Venus square Neptune, kind of that perfect reality check about where have we been spiritually bypassing and where do we really need to take stock of the actual place that we are and our what we're investing into those places, because that's really the root system, right? So that's one major transit, and you can see that that's already kind of built by the time we get to the next weekend. But also too, the sun is going to be in a conjunction with Uranus right after that. So we just had it with Mercury this coming weekend. Next weekend it's going to be the sun, and then at that point, this is where we have not necessarily a mental awakening, but we have much more of a heart opening and awakening, right? Because the sun representing Leo, there's a passion that is stimulated when Uranus and the sun come into this conjunction as well. So I feel like this is going to initiate that or trigger that, activate that passion for receiving, right? And to have that innocence and a sense of breakthrough, but it'll become through the heart as opposed to the head when we get to this point as well. And this square with Neptune is going to be a big part of that. I feel like that reality check is going to be the necessary friction for us to really direct that heart opening to a place that really is ready to receive the blessings, right? And that we've created the space in order to receive those blessings. That is also going to be part of the mix next weekend as well. And there was one more thing next weekend that I really wanted to focus on. Well, definitely the first quarter moon on the 23rd. Oh, there it is. It's on Memorial Day itself, which is when Mars squares the retrograde Pluto. So let's talk about that real quick too, the retrograde Pluto. So the retrograde Pluto is going to be there until October. So the demolition machine has turned off, right? So now we're just there with what's left, right? The battlefield. A retrograde time for Pluto is where we take stock of what's already been destroyed. We know that the remnants of that is now going to seep into the soil, right? It's going to become the nutrients for the new growth, but it needs time. And this is where we go way deeper into ourselves after all of this destruction that has happened. And we're talking about Aquarius. So we're talking about the collective as a whole, humanity as a whole, and the aspects that have been destroyed, basically. And now with the retrograde, we have until October to really sit with that, to really do our own deep inner transformation with everything that has happened, right? So Mars in a square to Pluto, in a fixed square to Pluto, both ruling the Scorpio realm, which is also a fixed sign. This square, again, is going to be one of those transits that really triggers us to do something, right? And in this case, it's 6 degrees Taurus. It's about bridging the gap, right? Conquering obstacles. I think that this is actually going to be a really useful transit, if that makes sense, right? Usually with Mars and Taurus, you're going to be like, man, I can't get anywhere. It's like a stick in the mud, right? I can't move because it's just inert, right? But this square with a retrograde Pluto is going to be about, okay, I might not be able to move in this direction right now, but I can make changes within myself, right? I can put this energy towards bridging these gaps and these obstacles within my own development, right? Because now that Pluto's retrograde, the work is really an inside job from now until October, right? When it stations direct again. So I feel like that, yes, as much as this type of transit really gets people like up in arms to like compete and to win. There's so much drive and there's so much power that is involved with a Mars-Pluto square that you really are just like, you want to get down to it and really get to the bottom of something. In this case, it's really going to be taking that personal initiative and bridging the gap. And so where's Taurus in your chart? It's going to show you what area of life this is going to represent. We're also still in Andromeda constellation energy. And so if you're an Andromeda starseed, especially Andromeda constellation, this is really going to bring up all of those things about, how do you stay true to yourself? Like, where do you put your personal energy for your spiritual growth and development, right? But there will feel like barriers, right? And I think that that's important to recognize. There could be some frustration. There could be some physical barriers. There could be some resource barriers. We're all going to have to learn to work with, right? Utilize what we do have in order to bridge this gap and to really do the inner work that will empower us down the road, right? So this, again, is part of this spiritual warrior archetype really emerging. And these types of transits, this whole weekend, next weekend, is just going to have a lot of tension and friction that is really going to be the catalyzing force to another push forward. And of course, a first quarter moon is going to be that crisis point, what do I do, right? A crisis in action. So squares are, you don't resolve a square. You just make the best of it. You grow and you learn, you lean into it. And this is a perfect example. So that's going to be next week and actually on Memorial Day, right? And so as we come into the last bit of this first half, right? And you can see that all of the red lines continue to be very present. So we know next week it's still going to be very tense. There's going to be a lot of friction that is really the foundation for our growth, right? When you start embracing those challenges, you realize this is where the growth really happens. The 28th is another reality check as we move into the waxing gibbous phase, getting ready for the full moon conjunct Antares. And that is that Venus is going to make another reality check, but it's going to be the square to Saturn. And this can be a lonely, frustrating, very kind of melancholy, especially with Venus in Cancer. We can feel very disconnected from from family, can feel misunderstood. We can feel lonely. We can feel separated from people when Venus and Saturn are in a square like this. And it's going to be Saturn that's providing the reality check about the difference between cosmic order and human law and order, right? Because there is certainly a difference. And Saturn at 12 degrees Aries is representing that cosmic order at 12 degrees. Now, Venus in Cancer at 12 degrees, some sort of revelation about, our latent power and worth comes forward, but the reality check with Saturn is going to make it a very, I just feel like everybody's going to have to kind of go through it on their own, regardless of who you're around and who's part of your life and who you're connected to. And if we're going to talk about Cancer and, the fourth house energy, very separated, isolated, kind of lonely. But this, again, is a reality check. And Saturn, as much as all the negative aspects of Saturn, it really is like the paternal foot coming down to be like, this is cosmic order. So take yourself back to the beginning here. Attunement to cosmic order. We go through this healing moment, this karmic turnaround with Mars and Chiron of what is the cosmic order that we're attuned to? What is the inner voice we're listening to? And when we come to this point, just on the heels of the full moon with this Venus square Saturn, yes, it's going to be difficult, but it's going to be, if we're attuned to cosmic order, we're already going to be ahead of the game. Saturn is going to be holding it down, and we'll be like, yes, this is the framework. This is the infrastructure. And the revelation that's coming forward might be really difficult. Maybe we're going to have a sense of like where our loyalties have been lying, that maybe we want to make changes there. Maybe we just become aware and deepen those relationships. That could also happen as well. This is right at, like I said, on the heels of the Sagittarius full moon, where this Venus square Saturn happens. This is the 28th. And then on the first is when we have our full moon, and we will definitely be back again to talk about it. So, my friends, wow, I kept it under an hour. I'm very proud of myself. So I'm going to end this transmission here. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate all of you so very much. The spiritual warrior emerges, my friends. So hopefully, ideally, everybody that's listening here, that is what's coming forward rather than that inner tyrant that's coming forward. So just be gentle and easy on yourself. Know that we have been forged in the fire. There might be some burns that are still present. Take care of your wounds, right? Mars Chiron conjunction today is a big part of that, right? Take care of your wounds. Be honest with yourself. Be gentle with yourself, but also know that we do have to gather our strength and push forward in order to grow. And that's what the spiritual warrior does. That is we have a sacred duty, and we're here to embrace that. So if you're interested in a reading, energy work session, anything that Catalyst Energies has to offer, including monthly membership, you can find the link to my website in the description box below, and everything else that you need in order to follow me on social media or to reach out via email. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the new moon. And I'll see you on the next forecast, which will be the full moon in Sagittarius. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you later.